Welcome to Fintech Brews and News, brought to you by Central Payments and Falls Fintech. I'm Nikkee Rhody.
And I'm Trent Sorby.
Founders, co-founders, payments professionals, and, well, just people who love brews. This is a place to get a behind-the-scenes look at unique partnerships and ways to bridge the financial gap between banking, startups, and the entire fintech industry. Whether it's a beer or coffee or something else, there's certain to be a brew in every episode. After all, how do we function in this space without it? Each episode, you're sure to take away some good stuff going on in the financial technology space. So without further ado, let's grab a brew. Hey guys, welcome to a very special episode of Fintech Brews and News. I'm Nikkee Rhody, and today is quite possibly going to be one of my favorite episodes we've done so far. Not only because it's about my hometown here in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, but because it's a part two of an episode we debuted for you a few weeks back about Sioux Falls, South Dakota being a mecca of financial services and a hub, really, of a lot of entrepreneurial activities. So we talked about the history of all that, but today it's got more of a focus around what is it like being an entrepreneur in Sioux Falls, what our startup ecosystem is like here. And so today there's two very, very special people with me, starting off with the mayor of our community. Paul, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, Nikkee. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
My name is Paul Tenhaken, 32nd mayor of this great city. Lived here for 21 years now, moved here in 2000, Minnesota guy by background, went to college in Iowa, met a girl, moved here, and 21 years later, I get to serve as the mayor. I'm 3.5 years into this gig and running for re-election in April of 22 and having a blast.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. And then, of course, Brienne.
Hi. Thanks for having me. So Brienne Manner, Executive Director of Startup Sioux Falls. I would say that I'm a Sioux Falls native, even though I was born in North Dakota and lived in Sioux City for about 2.5 years.
Where?
Sioux City, Iowa, folks.
Tell them the airport code in Sioux City. Anybody know?
SUX.
XUX.
That
At least
is
they
correct.
play it up well, like flying sucks. And I've seen t-shirts, it's actually pretty good. So we'll welcome you here.
Thank you. Thank you. But since third grade, have called Sioux Falls home. I went to school in Minnesota as well, St. Cloud State, and found my way back to Sioux Falls after I had a little stint at Sesame Street Live in Minneapolis,
you
which was my
didn't.
first job out of college, which is crazy. Kind of set the tone for my life, I would
Yes.
say. But it's funny that I've come full circle and that I'm leading the ecosystem organization because when I came back, Paul, if you remember this, 2004, 5, I started at Electric Pulp, which is a web agency here in town, which at the time, like, nobody really knew what the heck a website agency was. My first day on the job was this guy's last day on the job, so he
replaced
trained
me.
me.
This is going to seem like this is this small incestuous community.
It's true.
There's 270,000 people in the San Jose, but yes, she started at a web agency where I was working. I was transitioning out. This lady from Sesame Street was going to take my job. And now that web agency called Electric Pulp, they've gone on to do incredible things.
Yeah.
And but you remember early 2000s, that was kind of still the beginnings of the internet. People were still figuring it out and creating branding sites, and social media wasn't a thing yet. Digital marketing really wasn't even a thing yet. So
I think that's a really great place to kick off entrepreneurship here, because share with the audience a little bit about your journey before public office.
Yeah, so I left that position where Brienne and I both worked, and in 2008 I started a company called ClickRain, and started that company because for a few reasons, but Obama had just won the White House in 2008, and he had used digital marketing, digital technology like no other candidate had ever done. And, Twitter was brand new, Facebook wasn't a thing, MySpace was the big site, and he had used A/B testing.
Yourself.
I know.
Careful.
But kind of saw this tsunami that was coming with social media. And so I started this company called ClickRain, and my first several clients were politicians, helping politicians understand how to use the internet more effectively for fundraising and for IDing voters and different targeting strategies. And I did that for 10 years until 2018 before exiting a bit before that to run for office. That's a whole nother story on why would you leave entrepreneurship to do that. But so my background is in entrepreneurship and is in marketing technology, CRM software, email marketing, social media campaigns, all that stuff.
Love that. Brienne, talk about the startup Sioux Falls organization and what it means to our community.
Yeah. So the organization itself was founded back in 2004, so like about the time I was moving back to the city. And I just have to say that I'm so grateful that our city leaders had the foresight to say we need to invest in entrepreneurship and startup activity in our city. So when the organization was founded, it was founded as the South Dakota Technology and Business Center, the SDTBC. I'm so glad we don't have to speak in acronyms like that anymore.
We do enough of that in banking.
Yeah, right. The intent was that it was designed as a tech and biotech incubation space at the time. So they were kicking out some pretty big names. So notably Meta Payment Systems,
right.
which I think you used to work for,
Yes.
Nikkee.
Yeah.
They incubated out of the Zeal Center, which at the time was SDTBC, as well as DocuTap, which was eventually acquired by Xperity. So there's been some big names that have come out of this facility. And after so long, entrepreneurship, the landscape changed and the needs changed. And in 2016, which I think you were chair of the board at the time, you guys decided to pivot and rename yourselves Zeal Center for Entrepreneurship because entrepreneurship was kind of the buzzword. And in addition to that, there was an EDA grant that was awarded that gave them a 7,000 square foot addition on the building to add co-working space, which was kind of the thing at the time. And then you fast forward to 2020, good old pandemic time.
2020.
And we just started to realize how we're competing with people's homes, we're competing with coffee shops. Entrepreneurs can literally work from anywhere. And we are located on the northwest side of town on the Southeast Tech campus. And we want to make sure that we're as accessible as possible, that we're meeting entrepreneurs where they're at. So we've made the decision, the very difficult decision, because we're sitting kind of pretty out there in Northwest Sioux Falls on that campus, that we want to relocate our efforts to the downtown area because it's where everybody's at. It's where all the activity is, all of our service providers, entrepreneurs, like go to any of our local coffee shops. It's bursting at the seams with people typing away on their computers. We want to be a part of that scene. So in the next year or so, and we'll be making some bigger announcements soon, but we are relocating our efforts and we're downsizing pretty significantly. We're 45,000 square feet today and we're going down to probably less than 10.
Wow.
And really focusing our efforts more on the programmatic side, our accelerator program, building the community and working with some more of those service providers and ecosystem builders that are down here already and becoming more of a think tank, if you will.
What I love so much about what you guys are doing at Startup Sioux Falls is it's not just about looking for those biotech giants that need kind of a launching pad, so to speak, but you're serving everything from boutiques to biotech to ag and anything in between. Where did that pivot happen in your mind from going from this 45,000 square foot? You talked about location, but even beyond that, you're going to change the way you're serving. So co-starters maybe is a good example. What is co-starters all about?
So when I came onto the organization in 2019, one of the first gaps that I identified was that we didn't have a mechanism to be able to truly support entrepreneurs through a process. It was more like they're coming in and we're kicking them downstairs to the SBA and the SBDC. And that's not to say that those resources aren't valuable because they are. But this process is so overwhelming. It's stressful. You're one person. You can't possibly know everything about business.
And just for the sake of our audience, SBA, South Dakota.
So the Small Business Administration, but our
Okay.
South Dakota district office
Gotcha.
is located in our facility also. So that's kind of a nice little perk that we have going right now. But it was just really interesting to kind of identify that gap and then go out into the marketplace and talk to some other ecosystem organizations. And the name Co-Starters kept coming up over and over again. Proven effective. Fargo uses it. We get compared to Fargo, North Dakota all the time.
That's a shame.
So we
Kidding.
we love
Fargo's
Fargo.
great.
We love Fargo.
We do.
But so we decided to go forward with this program, and they've just been fantastic. We didn't have to reinvent something. The program already exists. We get the binders, we get the training, but the most beautiful part of it is that we're able to have deeper connections with those in the community that are like, I want to get more involved. So now we're hiring facilitators. So Eric Weiser of Weiser Distributing, one of a notable entrepreneur here in town, led our first cohort. And then we're bringing service providers in, lawyers, marketing execs, that can come in and share a little knowledge and deepen their connections with the startup community because they're literally going through the process with them. Yeah. So it's just been transformational for our organization to have that program running.
It seems like Sioux Falls being founded a bit on financial services and healthcare being two of the most risk-adverse industries. Finding a way and breaking through to find more entrepreneurs and focus on small business is such a gift. Paul, I'll turn this over to you to ask, in the last maybe decade, how have you seen Sioux Falls evolve with a spirit of entrepreneurship?
I'm going to go back further than a decade because it's really, the community, like most communities, I don't think we're unique in this, is founded on entrepreneurs who took a leap somewhere. In fact, we have a big sculpture in the middle of our downtown. It's called the Arc of Dreams, and it doesn't quite connect over the river. And that gap is supposed to symbolize the leap that you take as an entrepreneur to go from one side to the other. And so, you look at some of the families, some of the companies that have built this town. It's all men and women that were entrepreneurs at some point. Where it's really started to accelerate, though, is I would say in the last 20 years or so, where we've had to kind of reinvent ourselves as a community, and that Sioux Falls is not really deep in one specific sector. We're kind of a mile wide and an inch deep in a lot. We have biofuels, and we have strong healthcare industry, strong financial services industry. Our manufacturing sector has really grown. Value-added agriculture is big here. We're in South Dakota, and so ag is a big part of the state. And then our tourism industry has really exploded. People think of Mount Rushmore and the west side of the state as being tourism in South Dakota, but we end up being a stopping off point that is starting to get a lot more traction and activity. So what you'll find in Sioux Falls is that as industries evolve, I'll pick on biofuels, for example. I know some of us in the room have connection to biofuels in the past. When that industry maybe has peaks and valleys, other parts of the community, other different companies and organizations can kind of pick up that slack versus being a steel town or a manufacturing town, or we're really big in healthcare. Well, all it takes is one sweep of the pen from the White House to wreck healthcare, and a whole industry can be turned upside down and thousands of people can be without jobs. So we've really kind of evolved from an entrepreneurial standpoint to be more diverse. And we've seen kind of the next generation of entrepreneurs start to emerge in Sioux Falls. That has been really cool to see.
Yeah. We've hosted for Falls Fintech 20 companies now in the last 2 years from around the globe. And speaking of Mount Rushmore, a gentleman just landed in Sioux Falls about September of 2021. And he's like, hey, when I flew in, I tried to find Mount Rushmore and I couldn't see it. Which way do I go? Maybe I was just flying in the wrong. I'm like, oh, buddy, that's like 5 hours the other way. But I'm going to tell you guys that the verdict that constantly happens when people spend just a couple weeks here is, how can a guy like me, how can a gal like me find roots here? And people are saying it's the hidden gem. This is a place where people wrap their arms around you, primarily from an entrepreneurship perspective, but also just as a community, welcoming and a variety of different kind of services, really.
Well, I'll share with you an anecdotal story, and it's somewhat COVID related, but a friend of mine, his name's Tom Patterson, and his wife, Erin Fujimoto. They're the co-founders of Tommy John Underwear. Yeah. And Tom grew up in Millbank, South Dakota, almost in North Dakota. Yeah. Left, couldn't wait to get out of here after high school gone. They have since relocated here during the pandemic. They're running the company from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. They have no desire to leave South Dakota. They absolutely love it here. And the last year and a half, 2 years has really exposed to a lot of people, what are your personal freedoms mean to you? What's it like to have your kids in school, year round, and how much is that worth to you? Is it worth a Manhattan apartment to, have your kids in your apartment, or do you want to have places where they can run around and be outside and be in school and have, good quality of life and low crime and easy traffic and all those things? So there's a lot more people that are starting to take notice of the the Boise's and Nampa, Idahos of the world, and the Sioux Falls, South Dakotas, and the Des Moines, Iowas, and Rochester, Minnesotas. Those are becoming much more attractive, kind of mid-major communities because of some of those factors. And I think that's where you're seeing more entrepreneurs kind of set down roots there because they can really run their companies from anywhere. They're choosing to do it in a place where they can have a really good quality of life in doing so.
I totally agree. And I think the more we've got people that are showcasing the focus on startup communities like Startup Sioux Falls is really brilliant. Brienne, could you share a story, anything you can think of that has come out of either Co-Starters or Startup Sioux Falls that has really demonstrated the fostering of that community?
Sure can. And it actually relates to an initiative that you're involved with, Paul, that you and I think sat on a panel about, but Sioux 52, and this idea of aspiring to becoming a city of mentorship, that resonates with me in so many different ways. I've been a mentor, I've been mentored. There's just something powerful about it. So because of that initiative, we thought, well, we need to have a mentor network ourselves. So as part of the Co-Starters platform, we said, the best thing that we can do after these folks leave us after 10 weeks is to pair them and gift them a mentor in the city. And an example I'll give you is that, and I don't know if I won't say names, but there is a cannabis biotech business that came out of one of our cohorts that was paired with a gentleman who reached out to us cold to say, I want to be involved in your mentor network. Can you pair me? Wow. And my program manager, just kind of a light went on in her head, and she said, I want to pair him with this business. 6 weeks later, I'm having coffee with the mentor, and he tells me that this cannabis tech business is now valuated at $25 million, and that he's got VCs on the line for this guy out of Minneapolis. And that just blew my mind. Like that one simple connection. And I can't say that we're going to have that success with every mentor pairing, but that is such an incredible story. And that makes me feel like we are validated in the path that we're going as a city. And valuing mentorship and placing a priority on that is really important for so many different reasons. But for us specifically, like this has just been a great kind of, reset for our path forward and our vision for the future of the organization. So I'm grateful for the platform.
There's a laundry list of accolades that Sioux Falls often gets. I like to follow them because, I'm a little biased to the community. But Wallet Hub is one that I focus on. And Wallet Hub has repeatedly called Sioux Falls one of the best cities to start a business. So, Paul, what do you think contributes to that?
Well, the saying "you never profit in your own land" is very true because, as a mayor, I'm always talking about how great this city is. And people are like, wow, yeah, you're supposed to say that. But right. When you have the Wallet Hubs and Forbes and, Smart Asset and others that rank you high, it's kind of nice third-party validation to say, hey, it's not just me. They look at a variety of, qualifications to determine what makes a community great. I think there's a few things that make this a great place to start a business. One is the cost of living. And I think of when I started my business. Okay, I started my business in 2008. My first office space, I had about a 10 by 10 office space. I think I paid like $475 or $500 a month. There's no state income tax. And to Brienne's point, I had 3 or 4 people that I could directly reach out to who are willing to just mentor me. And you're really 1 or 2 phone calls away right now from probably getting some of the biggest, players in the community who would be willing to have coffee with you. So I think the tax climate is very good. It's a very affordable place to do business. I will also say that our workforce, well, we're challenged with workforce like everybody else. I was in the tech space and have web engineers and data engineers and so forth. The cost to hire those folks here compared to some other markets on the east or west coast is much more realistic, much more reasonable. Now, the downsides of that are if you do need venture capital money or access to deeper levels of capital, you're not probably going to find that here. There's some, and we're trying to do more of that, but if you're looking at private equity and all that stuff, Sioux Falls isn't typically a place where people look or think to look. But for those reasons and others, I think the community is very welcoming. The tax climate is good, and it's just a really great place to start a business. And I can say that because I did it, and it went great.
We talk about that at Falls FinTech a lot too, with regard to the tech talent that's kind of hidden here. And we think about Sioux Falls as a hidden gem. You know, DSU, Dakota State University, is just up the street, and they're a nationally recognized program for cybersecurity, which is obviously critical for any tech type company. There's an organization we're partnered with called Midwest.Tech, and it's all these capital intensive individuals and or venture capital firms or PE firms that are in the Midwest. And so we're trying to shine a light on more of that money that's available here too, that doesn't have to just be represented in the oversaturated coast too. So that's a fun way to create more awareness in our community.
Well, even right now we have, a friend of mine, several friends of mine are involved in a company that's a crypto trading platform that they've started and launched, and it uses different algorithmic signals to determine when's the right time to buy and sell certain types of crypto. And and it's just like they can do that here because the talent that they're able to get to do those algorithms and do the engineering work for that is very affordable. And if they have to outsource some of the heavier stuff, they're outsourcing it to the people on the coast who are in the coffee shops and doing other things that maybe do this just for contract work. And so there's still some like innovative entrepreneurial companies that are blossoming here, that are kind of flying under the radar that a lot of people won't know about until they really make it. You know, a lot of times you only hear about the big successful entrepreneurial success stories, but you know, America runs on the backs of small business. And even my company was 35 employees. It wasn't a huge company, but this city is made up of 10, 20, 30 person companies that someone took a risk on and started and are kind of the framework of our economy.
What do you think the value of accelerators are in a community like ours, and specifically around co-starters? Or, you know, Falls FinTech has a little bit of a different bent, but how important is that in a place like Sioux Falls?
Well, I'll say for me, it's very important for a couple reasons. One is we have a strong financial landscape. So if people look at a fintech accelerator in Sioux Falls, are like, this seems really weird. Why is this here? Well, we have a history of being, whether you look at our trust landscape and the billions and billions of dollars under assets we have managed in the trust market, or the Citibank roots or the bank charters that we have in South Dakota, this is a strong financial state. So fintech makes sense here. But second, why it's important to me is it gives these different companies exposure to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, so that, you know, the 1 out of 10 that really hit it big and are going to need to either set up an office or have HQ somewhere, or going to have, you know, some different, you know, networked locations. I want Sioux Falls to be in that conversation. Sioux Falls would not be in that conversation but for the exposure that an accelerator gives them to a community. And I think it's a great place to hang a shingle, you know, and grow a business. I think the talent's here and the workforce and the cost climate and all the stuff that I mentioned earlier. So
I've been known to be this volunteer tourism person. So I like to parade people around the local breweries and a lot of different places. I may or may not partake in a beverage. Anyway, one of the places I often take people is McKinnon Park. It's a beautiful part of our city with some historic homes and kind of Sioux Falls' version of Central Park, if I may. And every single time I take people from Chicago, New York, San Francisco, Miami, Dallas, or any of the coastal communities around the McKinnon Park area, they're like, wow, these homes have got to be at least $10 million homes. I'm like, nope. Many of them are, and I'll just kind of throw out some numbers that kind of seem about right for our market at the time. And they're like, shit, what is it gonna take for me to get here? And I'm like, plane ticket and a U-Haul, maybe you could send your stuff on through. But people are in love with this community. Yeah. And so I think next question really is flipped over to you, Brienne. When we, curveball, what is maybe one of your favorite things about serving entrepreneurs?
Ooh. You know, I'm going to flip this question around a little bit because something just happened. A very exciting news just came out of our organization about a week and a half ago that's very validating to the path that we're taking. But we were finally informed by the government that we have been awarded up to $1 million over 2 years to help with DE&I programming across the state of South Dakota through the SBA Community Navigator Grant. And by DE&I, I mean diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Awesome.
So we're taking this Co-Starters Accelerator model that has proven successful, and this is a hub and spoke model. So we're the hub, and we're going to be providing resources to 5 spoke organizations across the state to help bring this programming and these resources to underserved communities. So we're going to be working with folks on the Pine Ridge Reservation. Wow. We're going to be working with rural communities through an organization called Dakota Resources, serving women through the women's organization MB here in town, New Americans and Immigrants through LSS and other resources. And this is so important because we're a team of 4. And we're not able to do everything that we want to do and serve everyone in the way that we would love to serve them, because every community is different and they all have their own needs. And we need to be able to pivot and recreate this program for those communities specifically. So if they don't speak the language, for instance, we're using resources to bring in people that can translate. Working women, single mothers who have these ideas in their head and they don't know how to execute and they don't have the capacity. MB is going to provide childcare while they go through an accelerator program. Like, it gives me goosebumps, you guys. Like, I'm so thrilled to be able to bring this. So that's something, that's the stuff. Like, that's what gets me really excited, is being able to take our resources and blast them out there to as many people as we possibly can, and being as inclusive as we possibly can through this process.
Love that.
God knows what's going to happen, through all of these connections, but we're so excited to see what happens in the next 2 years.
Amazing. And for many of the audience that don't know, Pine Ridge is one of the poorest communities in the country.
Yep.
And so to be able to lean in and provide resources and inclusion in that way is really remarkable. So kudos and congrats to you guys.
Thank you.
Closing thoughts, Mayor Paul Tenhaken, what would you say to any entrepreneur that's thinking about what Sioux Falls might have to offer to help them launch well?
Well, we hear it all the time. We're not on people's radar, but once they get here, we're absolutely on the radar. So the hardest sell, and I'm not living with rose-colored glasses on. It's getting people to come to Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Like South Dakota, it's cold, snowy. Do you have electricity there?
Right. Do you live in teepees?
All the stereotypes of South Dakota.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a company come here recently and said, this feels like the West Coast of the Midwest, was what he was saying. What he meant by that is it really has a hipness and a vibe to it, and like the downtown has a kind of a swagger that he wasn't expecting. Mm-hmm. And so I took that as a compliment, as long as it's the right parts of the West Coast that he's referring to. But it's a great community, and we just always ask people, give us a shot, give us a look, because I think you'll find the access to capital, the tax climate, the housing market, as you touched on, workforce. It's a great place to live, work, play.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so grateful for you guys' time. Great kind of feed of what we're doing and what our community is all about. And I think that really wraps nicely into Fintech Brews and News and the different touch points we have with that audience. So thank you guys a ton.
Thank
Cheers
you.
to that.
Cheers.
All right. Is this what you do at the end?
This is it.
That's right.
Until next time, guys, thanks for...
There you have it. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Fintech Brews and News. Keep up with all the content and cool stuff happening at Falls Fintech and Central Payments by checking out our website, our YouTube channel, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss out on our next episode.
I'm Nikkee Rhody.
And I'm Trent Sorby. See you next time.
Cheers.